The students are on their way to an early morning class, thinking about who thought 8 a.m. classes were a good idea. Okay, let's be clear. Early morning classes feel painful, but are they actually harming our grades too? In our skit, we test whether early morning classes are related with lower attendance, shorter sleep, and bad grades. You can almost hear their brain shutting down. It's because not getting enough sleep makes it harder to concentrate. To briefly explain the method used in this study, the researchers studied digital behavior data from a large number of university students. They used learning management system login data from over 39,000 students to estimate their sleep and wake patterns. To validate these estimates, they also used wearable sleep trackers called antigraphy from 181 students who took part in a 6-week study. These participants were healthy undergraduates aged 18 to 25, non-smokers, and within a specific BMI range. This study used mobile technology to track class attendance. Smartphone sensors like Bluetooth and GPS, along with Wi-Fi data, were used to track over 24,000 students across campus, including classrooms and lecture halls. Time for questions! I want to ask Sarah first. So, do you think using Wi-Fi connection data is a reliable method? How does class start time affect students' attendance? Do earlier classes have any impact on their grades? And can you also tell me about napping?
Okay, so let's talk about the interesting results that they have found in the study. Firstly, we can see that there's a strong linear correlation between instructor-reported attendance and Wi-Fi confirmed attendance, suggesting that Wi-Fi connection data serves as a reliable proxy for tracking class attendance, which could be especially helpful in future studies involving large groups of students. The Wi-Fi confirmed attendance rate for lecture classes at 8 a.m. was about 10 percentage points lower compared to lecture classes that start at 10 a.m. or later. And this is adjusted for course level effects and demographic variables. Additionally, in the actigraphy studies, students did not wake up in time for nearly 1/3 of the classes that took place at 8 a.m., whereas they rarely slept past classes that began at noon or later. The first graph shows the proportion of students who woke up after their class has already started. The second shows who woke up late to make it in class on time. Both graphs clearly show that the majority of students struggle to wake up on time for their 8 a.m. classes the most. Moving on to the grades, where they tested if students that had more morning classes would have a lower GPA or not compared to students that had less morning classes. And if this was true, then students should probably start protesting for later classes in the day. I'm just kidding. They also analyzed the relationship between class time and grades of 30,000 plus students that takes the same number of course credits. And the finding shows that students with no morning classes had a higher GPA than all other groups. The data also displays that the more average morning classes per week, the wider the gap in the scores of GPA in comparison to no morning classes, suggesting the more morning classes you have, the lower GPA score will be. Saving the best for last, because we are going to talk about napping, and I personally love napping. I mean, who doesn't, right? The interesting thing that they found in the study is that students were most likely to nap on days when their first class starts in the early morning. And the data shows that nap frequency was highest for 8 a.m. at 10.9% and gradually dropping to 4.7% for classes that start at 4 p.m. The trend highlights how scheduling earlier classes might unintentionally contribute to reduced cognitive functioning and learning outcomes. So that's all from me about the results and data found in the study. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, I want to ask Krisha about research findings. So, what were the key findings from this study? Can you please interpret the data that Sarah discussed? How do morning classes affect their grades, like GPA? Have they found any difference between students with or without early classes? What are some possible real-world implications or changes university might consider?
Thank you, Sarah, for summarizing the statistics of this study. Let's get into the interpretation of the data we collected from the study and what are the implications of it in the real world. As previously mentioned by Sarah, Wi-Fi confirmed attendance rates were about 10 percentage points lower in students taking classes at 8 am compared with classes starting later in the day. Even though students frequently slept past start of classes at 8 am, they still lost about 1 hour of sleep on average compared with the days with only afternoon classes or no classes. This can be explained by the actigraphy data that suggests that students went to bed at around the same time but woke up earlier to attend morning classes. As a result, their nighttime sleep duration was shorter only on nights that preceded morning classes. This is further supported by the findings for the frequency of daytime naps, which was high in students who had classes early in the morning as opposed to students who did not. This suggests that students were sleepy on days when they had their classes starting early morning compared to days with classes starting later in the day. When they compare the time of the day that university students had their classes starting to their GPAs, they found that students who had more days of morning classes in a week had a lower GPA as compared to students who did not. These findings for sleep behavior and grades are consistent with the model that predict early class start times should be avoided for optimal cognitive performance in undergraduate students, as demonstrated by the GPA scores. Overall, the findings suggest that conduction of early morning classes might lead to higher chances of students missing classes, getting less sleep, and getting lower GPAs, which is essentially an unfavorable outcome for all the parties involved. Moving on to the real life implications. This study lays a foundation upon which future research can be done in order to test whether the reduction in number of days that university students have morning classes leads to meaningful improvements in sleep behavior, class attendance, and consequently learning and grades. Simultaneously, interventions to improve students' self-regulation skills may be important for ensuring that students allocate enough time for sleep and attend classes. Such interventions could even be implemented using the learning management system to provide feedback to students on how to improve their sleep and learning behavior. That's all from the findings of the study and the exciting real-life implications that opens the future doors for leading strides in the future.
Thank you, Krisha. Now, Chloe, could you please share the conclusions of this study?
Of course, so essentially the findings from this study highlight consistent and compelling pattern. Early morning university classes are misaligned with students' natural sleep-wake cycles, leading to poorer academic outcomes. Through multiple data streams, including actigraphy, LMS usage, and Wi-Fi confirmed attendance, the study reveals that early classes result in reduced sleep, lower attendance, increased daytime sleepiness, and ultimately diminished academic performance. Notably, students with no morning classes consistently achieved higher GPAs, with performance declining as morning classes increased in frequency. These results, however, aren't just about fatigue. They underscore a systemic issue where institutional schedules clash with biological and behavioral realities. Going forward, these insights offer a critical foundation for universities to reconsider class scheduling. For example, reducing early morning classes or integrating support tools through platforms like the LMS could help students better manage their sleep, improve attendance, and enhance learning outcomes. Ultimately, aligning academic structures with students' biological rhythms isn't just beneficial, but essential to fostering an environment where both academic success and student well-being can truly thrive.
Thank you, Chloe. Lastly, Kentham, are there any important things that we have to know about this study? I believe that this study must have a strength or weakness.
Hey there, I'm Kenton, and there are some important strengths and weaknesses you should know about the study. First off, the strengths. As mentioned before, Wi-Fi was used to measure the attendance rates of classes, and LMS were used to track students' sleeping habits. What makes these strengths is that they are both reliable ways to collect student data. Both of these methods can be used again in future studies. Furthermore, only quantitative data was measured. GPAs, class start times, and attendance rates were used instead of asking for student or lecturer opinions. This is another strength, as non-quantitative data could possibly be a confounding variable of the study. But I gotta talk about the weaknesses. Some confounding variables were ignored in the study. For example, whether the students lived further away, as this would increase their travel time to the university, or if they viewed lectures online rather than in person. Measuring sleep patterns using the LMS may also be inaccurate, as it cannot account for some individuals which have habits such as staying up late doing personal readings or going out to parties. The most important thing to note is that this is an observational study, not an experiment. So all that can be proven is correlation, not causation. But every study has its flaws, so read it yourself, or don't. I don't care, I'm going back to sleep.